Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Today in the Word. I'm here with our author of our devotional on the book of Job, Dr. Eric Moore. Welcome, Eric.
Hi, Jamie. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. We like to dig a little deeper in these mid-month videos. We're halfway through our study. It's titled Seeking Answers. So we're going to look at the question, what did Job's friends and family members get wrong? But before we do, let's give a little snapshot for those of you who might just be joining us on what has happened in the book of Job. So Eric, I'll let you give the mini version.
The mini version is that Job is a good guy living for the Lord. He's described by God as blameless. I mean, that's a great description. I mean, if God himself is saying that an individual is blameless, and you know that he is a person of integrity. And Satan is, of course, he's the accuser. He's looking to and fro around the world looking for somebody, and he basically tells the Lord that there's nobody that will serve him for free. I mean, people only serve him because they get something out of it. And he sees Job, and the Lord gives him limited permission to be able to attack him. And first is his family and his wealth, and then his health. And so his friends find out about this. 3 friends, they come and they sit with him and comfort him for 7 days. And then they begin to articulate why they think that Job is in the situation he is. And it goes from bad to worse. And eventually God comes in, he speaks, and he tells them to be quiet, and he starts talking to Job, and then at the end he restores Job. But that is definitely the cliff notes of cliff notes with regard to the book of Job.
Yeah, so these friends and family members and their advice to Job, their counsel to Job, take up a good portion of the book.
Right.
This is a good, and as you've said, very often we skip over it, but you said to me when you started writing it, there's some good stuff here that we need to really look at. Like, why were his friends saying the things they did? And what are they getting wrong? So I wanted to kind of hone in on that here. We've all been on either, I think, the giving end of counsel when we have a friend going through suffering, or the receiving end of it when we're walking through a hard time. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you the advice or the thoughts I've gotten have not always been helpful. I don't know if you've seen that as a pastor, but you know, it's difficult to be a friend when someone's going through a hard time, and especially a long-term friend, correct?
Right. Yeah, it can be tough. And when I look at Job's friends, I think they started off well. They came alongside. They appeared to be comforting. They didn't say anything. Just their presence is a blessing. And a lot of times when people are suffering, let me put it this way. I know there are a number of times that people don't comfort people because it's like they don't know what to say. And
awkward.
Really, you don't have to say anything. You can say, I'm sorry this is happening to you. I feel for you. I pray for you. But your presence means more than what you say. And so initially, I think they got it right. They came alongside. They didn't have much to say, and they were right there with Job. But then something tells me, it's not there in the text, but something tells me that even though they were quiet with Job, they themselves were thinking through why Job is in this situation. And so it appears they couldn't wait to begin to help their friend by having their friend confess his sin so that he would get better, or he would be forgiven. And so that's I think where they began the whole process of going wrong.
Yeah, it's really about, like, there had to be a reason, right? And so they've assigned the blame to Job.
Right. They've assigned, and it's interesting because I think, as you have said earlier, we reading the book have a view. We get to see behind the scenes, so we already know how God feels about Job. And so these individuals are saying that he must have sinned, and that's their limited perspective. They
Mm.
think they're helping because they want their friend to do better or to feel better or to be healed, but they're telling them something that's not true. Now, part of this might be because, once again, Job is one of the arguably the earliest book in the canon, and so what did they really know about grace and about comforting and God's forgiveness? We don't know, but we do know that they had a mindset of what we would call retribution theology. If you do bad, bad's going to happen. If you do good, good is going to happen. But
Sounds a lot like karma, right?
yeah. But what's interesting is it seems like that theology still permeates a certain sect of Christianity even today, and also
Oh, I would
maybe
say so.
even Christians who don't really understand the grace of God, and so we
Hmm.
want we want our friends to fess up so that God can forgive them and they can be healed or set right.
Hmm. Yeah, and you think that if there's something that happens to you, it's automatically linked to sin. I've heard people say that, that there must be some hidden sin in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and and
and that,
and and I think you and I would say, yeah, there's sin, there's sin
mhm,
someplace. We live in a broken world. It's a fallen world. It's a
mhm,
cursed world, and so I may be suffering because of somebody else's sin. I might be collateral damage. It's not that I myself necessarily sinned. And when you look at it,
mhm,
we're all sinners. So
right.
why is my sin going to get punished more than somebody else's sin, right? So there's a whole lot of faulty thinking around
Mhm.
this sin question or this sin thought.
And God could certainly punish or discipline or cause things to happen. We see that in scripture, but it's not a one for one situation
That's
all
right.
the time. And I think they make it must be this because
Right.
otherwise you wouldn't be suffering.
Yeah, and I think right. So God uses suffering as a means of correction, and so
Hmm.
if I'm suffering, I don't think that it's wrong to do self-examination. Is this why? But after one has done self-examination and said, "Well, I'm not being convicted. I don't see anything in the word. I've confessed
Hmm.
my sin or whatever." Then maybe this is because of something totally different, right?
Right, right.
It's almost
Yeah.
it's almost it's almost a view of if my kids go wrong, it's definitely because of what I as a parent
Mm.
have done. And so that's not true. Right? We do the best of our ability, but our kids have their own free will and they make their decisions. And so each of us has to own up to what's going on in our own life. So yeah, it's
Mm.
not this one-to-one correlation.
I like that. Yeah, I think that's right. Anything else you would add in about the advice his friends or his wife give him that was problematic?
Yeah, well, you wouldn't expect that from his wife, if you were writing the story. Not you, Jamie, but I mean,
Mhm.
if we were writing the story, right? But she's hurting too. She lost her kids,
Right.
right? And she has lost all of her wealth right along
Hmm.
with Job. And so there's the possibility that she's thinking that maybe there is something going on here and God is punishing you, or maybe she thinks that God isn't good at that moment. But we know she had a change of heart, even though she's not mentioned later. But when God restores, we're going to make the assumption that he restores with his present wife. So she obviously has learned a lesson or is learning through this whole process as well. And she probably wants to help him, but she also is limited in what she can do. Now, the thing about the friends though is the more and more that Job expresses the fact that he's been a person of integrity, it appears the more and more they don't believe him, and so they want him. At least two of the three want him to confess, so that he can get better. But one, depending on how you read him, he seems like he is kind of like, okay, Job, since you're going to be so hard headed, what comes to you deserve.
Hmm.
You gotta read through that to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's rough, right?
yeah, definitely.
Um, so if we take away, and we won't give all of this away because it's there for you. We're about halfway through the study. So we're going to let you finish and dig deep into this book with Dr. Moore's devotional. But what can we take away and learn maybe in how we respond to suffering or how we give counsel when somebody is suffering? You've been a pastor for many years, so any advice on that?
Yeah, I think number one, it's okay to ask God why you might be suffering. I mean, I've heard pastors and theologians say that the why question is not needed if we're living by faith. That shouldn't be an issue. But I think that with the human condition, when things happen, we always ask why. Ask any engineer or technician if something breaks down. We want to know why so that we can fix it. I mean, that's just
Mm-hmm.
how human beings think. So I think it's okay for us to seek God on why this might be happening to us. But if we aren't getting an answer, what that tells us is that now we need to trust God in this entire process. And I think that's where God is taking Job at the end. That Job, you have to trust me. You 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 won't know exactly what's going on in the heavenlies, my back and forth with Satan, but you have to trust me in this. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that's one of the things that we can definitely learn, to trust God in the midst of it. And I think when we are comforters, number one, I think we listen to what individuals has to say. I think we come alongside them to the best of our ability, and then when that window opens where they are uh, open to hear what we have to say, we help them to trust God in the
Mm-hmm.
midst of that. And so I think the timing is very delicate. You don't come in right away, somebody's hurting or whatever, and you say, well, this is all part of God's plan for you. I mean, they aren't ready to hear that,
No.
right? But if you continue to walk alongside of them, you will eventually have the opportunity where they're ready to listen, and you can point them back towards trusting God.
Yeah, I like that. Just putting the focus there instead of them trying to fix it by looking at what Job did, but just saying,
Hmm.
we know God, we've trusted God in the past. He's had you in the past,
Hmm.
pointing back to who God is and his character.
Right.
I remember when my dad died suddenly, and the next morning, some women that were friends with my mom from church just showed up and sat on the sofa, and
Hmm.
there wasn't a lot of talking going on. But I do think that presence you mentioned earlier is just so important. And that's the part his friends got right at the beginning,
Hmm.
right? They were there with him, they did sit with him in his pain. But it's the aftermath. We just have to be careful
Right.
that we're not
Right.
imposing our own solutions, I guess, on it, right?
Yeah. Right. It's so easy to not be in the middle of the storm and give advice to the person who's in the storm.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I do want to say
Yeah.
this, that I do believe there is a ministry of presence. There is,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, presence means a lot. And I think oftentimes we miss that opportunity to really comfort people because we say we don't know what to say, so we're not gonna
Right.
engage.
And maybe we shouldn't say much of anything, right?
Right.
Maybe it's just being with someone.
That's right, definitely.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you so much. This is a wonderful study, a very meaningful study, and I think it will be helpful to a lot of people. So thank you all for reading today in the Word with us. Be sure to get the family study. We did one for the children and how to help your children walk through hard things, knowing that God is on their side. So, and if you like these videos, please do like them and subscribe to this channel. It helps us a great deal. Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome, Jamie. Thanks so much.